Jesus Love Today.
Good evening and welcome to The Call. My name's Becky Murray and I'm the founder of a missions organisation called One by One. Over this series, we've been looking at all different aspects to do with the call of God. You see, this show is actually about you as you begin to step out. So previously we've looked at how the call comes and how we initially step out, God's provision and God's protection as we step out in his plans and purposes. And this is our final week together. And so tonight, I want to look with you at perseverance and passion. You see, the truth is, as we step out and follow God's plan for our life, curveballs will come our way. Life has the incredible ability to throw challenges our way. And at those times, it's so tempting to just quit. Things are difficult, things are too hard, it's not convenient, and it's so tempting to lay down the plans and purposes and pursue a life that seems much more simple and far easier. But I want to encourage you this evening to really step out, because the call that God has got for your life is incredible. But it is going to take both perseverance and passion after him. I believe that out of intimacy flows great fruitfulness. And so if you truly want to fulfill the whole call that God has got over your life, the key is really intimacy with Jesus Christ. I've had seasons and times in my life where things have become quite challenging. I remember my first ever missions trip to Africa. I went out to Mozambique to a mission school. I'd never been in Africa before, but I knew that God had got a call over my life. And even as a tiny little girl, I used to tell my mom, I'm going to be a missionary in Africa, literally as a 3- and 4-year-old. But finally, I came to Mozambique, and it was my first time in Africa in 2005. And my time there was incredible. It was a season where God just wooed my heart in the most beautiful of ways. I fell madly in love with Jesus Christ. And the truth is, when you fall in love with him, everything else begins to flow anyway. When we put the first commandment first, to love God with all our hearts, with all our souls, and with all our minds, when we put that first, it's then easier to follow the second commandment, which is to love our neighbour well. And so I fell madly in love with Jesus. It was incredible 3 months in Mozambique. However, there was one incident which happened, which, if I'm honest, almost stopped the call of God in my life before it even began. I almost thought my dreams were over before we'd even started. I was out this particular day. We was there for a mission school, but I got a day off. And I remember going to the beach, and obviously being a British girl, sunshine and beach, come on, what better way to spend your day off? And I was strolling along the beach, and it was a deserted beach. And I remember just looking at all the starfish on the ocean floor. And all of a sudden, a man approached me and attacked me. And I felt violated, I felt vulnerable. And if I'm honest, I was absolutely petrified in that moment. I managed to run for help. I managed to make it to a little cafe and sought help. But if I'm honest, a moment like that, being sexually assaulted that day, almost stopped me from pursuing the call of God. It was too hard, it was too difficult, and if I'm honest, it was too scary. But that's where your passion for Jesus has to come through. Without your passion for Jesus, you won't have the perseverance for when the challenges come. And I want to look at a scripture today of someone who shows an incredible passion for Jesus, and it gives her a persistence and a perseverance to push through into a realm of faith when it could have been tempting to stay in the realm of disappointment. And so I want to look with you today at Martha. the moment's happened where her brother Lazarus has died. And Lazarus has been ill for some time, and it seems like there's no hope. You know, he's got this mystery illness, and he's getting sick, and there's no hope except Jesus. And it just so happens they're great friends with Jesus. And so Martha and Mary reach out. If they can just get word to Jesus, if Jesus will just come, then Lazarus will be fine. I mean, they've seen Jesus multiply food at this point, and they've heard the disciples talking about Jesus walking on water. They've seen him heal the blind and heal many sick, and so they know if Lazarus can just get to Jesus, all will be well. And they send for help, but day after day after day passes by, and Jesus doesn't come. And in fact, Lazarus dies, and he's now been buried for 4 days, and there's still no Jesus. I want to pick it up from John chapter 11 and verse 17. It says this: "So when Jesus came, he found that he," this is Lazarus, "had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had joined around the women, both Martha and Mary, to comfort them concerning their brother. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went out to meet him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, 'Lord, had you been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you.' Verse 21 says this: 'If you had been here, my brother would not have died.' You can hear the disappointment in Martha's tone as she rushes to Jesus, and the very first words that she greets him with were, 'If you'd have just been here.' I don't know about you, but sometimes we go through seasons where you just think, 'God, where are you? What's going on? It shouldn't have gone this way, Jesus.' Or, 'Jesus, it looks like you're too late to the scenario. Where were you when we needed you 4 days ago? Where were you when we reached out and said Lazarus were ill? Where were you?' And you can almost hear, it's almost a sense of disappointment, maybe even a sense of betrayal. See, they were a friend of Jesus. Jesus had come and eaten in their home, and they were friends, and yet he'd reached out and healed the sick who he'd never even met before, people who had passed in the street, and suddenly he'd healed them, and yet their own friend Lazarus, he didn't come. And you can hear the disappointment in her voice. 'Jesus, if you'd have just been here.' And she's got this moment where she can camp in disappointment. See, genuine disappointments hit as her brother's died, and he's not just dead, he's now dead and buried. You ever had a dream and you think, this is just impossible. My dream now feels like it's died. And in fact, it's not just dead, it's dead and buried. I mean, this scenario is now impossible to move forward. And we have a choice. We can choose to camp in the realm of disappointment because things didn't turn out how we thought they should go, didn't turn out how we prayed it should go. But Martha does something remarkable. Immediately following those words of disappointment of "if he'd have just been here, he wouldn't have died," immediately the very next verse says this: "But even now, anything that you ask of the Father, he'll do." Martha suddenly moves from disappointment into faith. And that's the choice for me and you. We can choose to camp in areas of disappointment when we're walking in the call and the plans and purposes of God, and suddenly a curveball hits us and it seems to knock us off track, or at least appearingly knock us off track. We can choose to camp in disappointment. We can have a pity party. We can say, "Oh, woe is me," and feel all sorry for ourselves because it's just not turned out how we prayed it to go and how we predicted it to go. Or, just like Martha, we can choose to move over to the camp of faith and say, "But even now, yes, life's not gone how I thought it would go, but even now, I know that anything you ask of the Father, he'll do." And the truth is, when we are passionately in love with Jesus, that becomes our be-all and end-all. It doesn't matter what our circumstances say. It doesn't matter what curveballs are thrown our way or what disappointments we encounter on the way. And let me tell you, there are going to be moments where you may encounter disappointment. But I know my Father. I know Jesus. And as we move over to the realm of faith and say, "But even now," you see, God's got this incredible ability to turn everything around for good those who love him and are called according to his purposes. And while ever Jesus is first in your life, no matter what disappointment you face, you can lay it at the cross today and say, okay, Jesus, I don't understand this. I don't understand why I was assaulted on a beach right on my very first ever missions trip. Gosh, talk about knocking me off track potentially. But we have a choice. We can either feel really sorry for ourselves and play the victim card, or we can come before God and say, okay, I don't understand this. I'm disappointed by this. But even now, God, I'm going to submit this to you and pray that you will turn this around. I remember a few years ago, I was out in Kenya and I met this little girl. Now, the steps to me meeting this little girl were quite interesting. We'd heard of a lady whose house was crumbling. It was falling apart. And she wasn't in our village. She was actually in a neighbouring village several kilometres away. And she was living in a town called Mauko. And we heard that her house was crumbling. And so myself and a friend thought, you know what, let's go and help rebuild the house. Now, that in and of itself is hilarious. I can just about hang a picture on a wall. So the fact that I thought I could go and help rebuild her mud hut is hilarious. But I guess my heart was in the right place. And so I'd gone to this village that I'd never heard of before to go and help this woman. And when we arrived, this lady wasn't even there. The house, I saw the crumbling house, but the lady wasn't there. But as soon as I walked on the compound where this house was, I saw this little girl. Her name was Brenda. And I remember noticing her arms. Her arms were tiny. They weren't much thicker than that of my thumb. I'd never seen such tiny, tiny limbs. And yet she had this huge swollen belly. And so at first, when I walked towards her, I thought, oh my goodness, this is the worst case of malnutrition I've ever seen. But as I bent down to talk to her, I noticed her legs, and her legs were the normal size of that of an 8-year-old little girl. And so I remember thinking, well, this can't be malnutrition then. Brenda was perched on the edge of her chair and literally gasping for each breath. You could see she was in so much pain. And so we spoke with the family and managed to get her into hospital and said, look, we'll take care of the medical treatment, don't worry, any costs, we'll take care of it. We got her into a hospital and Brenda was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma. That's a cancer of the immune cells, and actually the big mass in her belly was a tumour, and the tumour had pulled all the goodness out of her upper limbs, which is why her arms were so tiny and frail. Well, we started trying to get her some treatment, but sadly the family pulled her out of hospital, and within a few days Brenda died. I remember thinking, no, it wasn't supposed to go that way. You see, in my mind, I'd come to the conclusion that the way I met Brenda was quite an interesting story, far too big to go into, but it was like this jigsaw puzzle coming together. And so when I met her, I thought, this is the inroad into her village of Mauko. She's going to be healed, and as a result of that, we'll get to spread the gospel, and lots of people will hear about Jesus. And then when the opposite died and Brenda passed away, I felt so disappointed. I didn't understand it. And I remember thinking, why, God? Why did it have to go this way? I had a choice. I could remain in the disappointment, or through my disappointment, I could choose to lean into Jesus and say, okay, even now, God, what do you want to do? And as we began to pray, we felt God begin to speak to us about this village. We started doing some research and found out that within just a few weeks of being in Mauko, there'd been several murders, there'd been gang rapes, there'd been so many suicides. It was just unheard of for a tiny village in the middle of nowhere to have so much go appearingly wrong. We found out that the village was renowned for witchcraft. Police were nervous to go into that village because of the amount of crime that happened there. Locals describe the people in Mauko as having blood in their blood. Their grandparents murdered, their fathers murdered, and so, of course, they're going to go and murder too, obviously. Well, I remember calling home and saying to my husband, I've discovered this village, it's renowned for gang rape and murder, can we go there? Well, to my amazement, my husband agreed, but on the condition he had to be there too. And so actually we ended up taking a team from our home church out to this village of Mauko, a village that had only ever been known for witchcraft, murder and darkness before. I remember we set up in this big marketplace and just began to share the gospel. And as we did that, different miracles started to happen. And one little girl with blind eyes began to see. And the locals said, oh my goodness, we've seen power before, but the power we've seen before has had strings attached and it's come with fear and darkness. But all of a sudden we're seeing a power that's even greater, but we feel light with it and we feel hope and we feel peace and we feel joy. And they begin to describe the fruits of the Spirit, even though they've never picked up a Bible before. Well, we preached the gospel and within 2 days, 62 people gave their hearts and lives to Christ. I remember in the middle of this marketplace, there was a tree, and we planted a church under a tree and began to watch God at work. Well, now, several years later, we own land there, we have a church there, and every single week, over 100 people attend that church, week in, week out. And Morocco is a very different place to how it was on the time when we met Brenda. But we had a choice in that moment. We could either remain disappointed, or we could press in and say, okay, God, even now, in a situation that we didn't think it was supposed to go this way, what do you want to do? Fruitfulness flows out of intimacy. I want to challenge you today. Maybe you've begun walking in the call of God, but things are just not working as you thought they would. Let me tell you, wherever your heart is set on Jesus Christ, everything will be turned around for his glory. Wherever he is your first thought. You see, if it's all about what we do for God, we miss the key. It's all going to be about him. Wherever we're walking just in love with Jesus, everything else begins to flow. I shared a few weeks ago about the Dignity Project, which is an initiative our charity does to help girls at risk of human trafficking. It started in our village of Kenya, but has begun to grow around the world. Well, I'm going to show you a video in just a few moments of when we took it into India. You see, we've seen real fruitfulness flow out of this project. But this project was birthed in my heart during a time of worship. It was during a time when my eyes were cast upon Jesus, just loving Jesus. And during this time, the plan of the Dignity Project just dropped in my heart of what it would look like and how we would reach these girls. Well, I want to show you this video from India to see what the Dignity Project has now gone on and done around the world. So watch this.
Welcome to India. We're excited at all God has in store for us this week.
We've got a team here from the UK and America and a jam-packed schedule. So today we're in a remote village doing hygiene training with the children. So everything from how to brush their teeth, to what foods to eat, to doing physical exercise.
Then we're going to do the nurses station, so we're going to be looking for whether they've got inflamed lymph nodes and whether they're feeling all right and their general health.
We're going to be speaking about nutrition today with the children in the school, and we're going to be teaching them how important it is to drink water, to eat their protein, to have fruits and vegetables, to eat an egg every day.
Every day. You know, I went into nursing to do this kind of thing, to be able to have a transferable skill to just spread across wherever you go. And so for me, my heart's just bursting. I'm like, come on, I'm in my zone, I'm ready.
And we've also been able to reach some girls with some of the Dignity Project teaching, so going over menstruation, the female body, reproductive health, but also human trafficking, how to stay safe, and also speaking up about sexual abuse and creating a safe space surrounding the girl.
What has started as being to our trip in India. We've been in slums, we've been in remote villages where children live in absolute poverty. Some of them spend their entire days in garbage dumps. But we're here today because of the Dignity Project. And tomorrow we're going to be reaching thousands of girls. We're getting ready, we're packing bags, we're getting the stage ready, and we're going to make sure that every girl leaves this field tomorrow with dignity and the love of Jesus Christ.
So the team is doing some last minute preparations to make sure that everything is perfect for these girls. We're so excited.
My heart is that at the end of today, every single one of you will walk out of this place clothed in strength and dignity.
Today I have learned about how we can protect ourselves and how can be aware of our human trafficking.
We're delighted to announce that we reached more than 4,000 girls. That's our largest ever Dignity Day to date.
It really helps us because our goal is to reach 20,000 before the end of 2020, and now with this it puts us at just over 14,000 girls. So we want to thank you for your prayers and support this week. It really means the world.
As we press on with our vision, maybe you can help us reach more girls with the Dignity Project. We still need people to come on future trips, we still need financial support, and of course we need prayer. So check out onebyone.net and you can get involved.
What a trip that was. You know, as we step out, we've seen God do incredible things all around the world. Let me encourage you, please check out the website for more information. If you want to read more about the Dignity Project, the different nations that we work in, you can go and look. Maybe in the future, you'll even join us on a trip out there doing the Dignity Project with us. Also on the website, you can look at child sponsorship. We've got lots of kids in our homes, both in Kenya and in Pakistan. If you want to help, we've got lots of kids still needing sponsors. So have a look at the website. It's £18 a month, and you can help to sponsor a child. Finally, on the website, you can also pick up a copy of Embrace the Journey. Now, this is available all over in Waterstones and lots of different places, but actually, if you buy it from One by One directly, all the profits go back into our missions work. The book's full of different stories of what God's done all around the world. Just as we've fallen in love with Jesus, we've watched him do the rest. Well, the little clip you just saw was of the Dignity Project in India. And we've had the joy of taking the Dignity Project to lots of different countries. And in some of them countries, I've had a special guest, which is my own little boy, Josiah. And so, being as this is the final episode, I thought, you know what? Why not invite Josiah onto the show for you to meet? Because he's had experience of being on the mission field firsthand, even though he's only 10 years old. So, Josiah, I am so excited to have you join me tonight.
Yes, I am. I'm really excited as well.
So, you've been in lots of different countries with Mum and Dad. Obviously, you can't come on every trip that we do because you're in school. But during the school holidays, you've come on lots of different trips with us, doing the Dignity Project and all sorts of different things. What countries have you been to so far?
Yeah, I've been to South Africa quite a couple of times, and then I've also been to the King's Children Home in Kenya, which has been amazing.
Yeah, you have. You've got to meet all your brothers and sisters out in Kenya.
Yeah.
But I remember, so you've been to South Africa helping us with the Dignity Project, so you've given the girls their pink bags for many, many times. But I remember on one particular trip to South Africa, something really exciting and very special happened in your heart. Can you tell us what happened?
Yes, one night in South Africa we went to a church, and before that I've never worshipped in my entire life. And at that very moment I decided, why not give it a go to worship? So I decided to do it, and at that very second I began, I felt God touch my heart, and ever since then I've loved to worship, and I know I've made the right choice to believe in God and always worship him.
Come on, I love that. I actually remember that evening. I remember watching you. You suddenly started jumping up and down and your arms were up in worship. You were just lost in that moment. What's changed? So you believe in that moment Jesus actually came into your heart, don't
Yeah,
you?
definitely.
What's changed since that time?
Yeah, before, when church started, I didn't really understand it, and I just wanted to play games instead and not really be involved with church. But then when we got home from South Africa, ever since then at my church, I've always been worshipping God, and I've never turned my back on him, and I hope I will never will.
Come on, I love that, baby. Well, I'm so, so proud of you. I have watched firsthand a big change in you. The time when you suddenly fell in love with Jesus, I saw a big change in your heart and life, and I know as you continue just loving God, he's going to do incredible things with your life. Amen?
Amen.
I love it. Well, I want to encourage you. It's as we fall in love with Jesus that everything else comes into place. You know, so many times it's like we are working on the acts of service. We want to work for God and serve God, and it's all as if that becomes our main focus. But actually, it's as we cast our minds upon God, as we turn our hearts wholeheartedly towards Jesus Christ, that the fruit begins to flow. And we've seen, as we've simply said yes to God, you know, we don't not have it all figured out. We don't always know what nation next or where we're going to be in 10 years' time. But we know that as we continue saying yes to Jesus, he'll do the rest. You know, I want to encourage you to just cast your mind on Jesus tonight. I don't know what the plan or the call of God over your life is. Maybe it's for world missions, or maybe it's to serve your local church. Maybe it's simply raising your family well or working well in your marketplace. Whatever that call over your life is, let me tell you, as you cast your attention on Jesus first and foremost, the fruit will flow through your life. Well, it's been an honour to be with you throughout this series. We've looked at everything from his protection to his provision to our passion and perseverance as we follow him. And I know that God's got an incredible call over your life. I want to encourage you, please stay in touch with us at One by One. The email address is on the screen. If you've had a testimony or if something over this series has spoke to your heart, we would love to stay in touch with you. You can follow the work that we do through social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and we would love you to connect with our charity, whether it's through child sponsorship or helping a girl in the Dignity Project, or maybe even joining us on the field yourself. We would love to have you come join us. But I want to end this series by saying, fall in love with Jesus. I remember a few years ago having a vision, and in the vision I was holding a cup. And I went to give this boy a little drink, and it was long before a children's home, but I gave this boy a little drink, and as he was drinking from the tiny bit left in my cup, I looked and all these children were gathered around, and they all wanted a drink, and I didn't have enough. And in the vision, I simply lifted my cup to heaven, and as I did, all of a sudden, this flow from heaven began to come. And all of a sudden, the children around me no longer drank from my cup, but they drank from the overflow. And I want to tell you, it's the same in your life. While ever you've got an empty cup, you can do all the action of bending down to give someone a drink. You can do all the right actions, but people around you are still left broken, still left thirsty, still left hungry. But while ever you choose to lift your cup, your life towards heaven, and allow God to pour into your life, the people around you will drink from the overflow of your life. Fruitfulness flows out of intimacy, and we've seen that time and time and time again. So even Josiah, my 10-year-old boy, has learned that falling in love with Jesus is the key for it all. As we cast our eyes on Jesus, we watch him do incredible, miraculous, wonderful things through your life. I want to encourage you with the same thing that I started this whole series with, and that's saying yes to Jesus. As you say yes to him and allow him to pour through your life, at the other side of your yes is miracles of transformation. God bless you. It's been an honor to be with you.
Hi there, my name's Ben Conway, and I would like to invite you to our annual summer family conference. We're going to have great praise and worship with Chris and Vaughn. We've got some great guest speakers coming over, and it's in Dartford, and it's going to be for 4 days in August, and you should go to tree.church/healthenations, find all about it, register, and we would love to see you there. We're going to see healings, we're going to see miracles, we're going to see the kingdom of God advanced. That's at tree.church/healthenations. We would love to see you there. I don't think you'll ever be the same again after these 4 days of glory. So get yourself registered, pray about it, and we would love to see you at our conference, Heal the Nations, this year. Thank you.
Get Get ready for an extraordinary experience. Lady to Lady Global Annual Women's Conference on Saturday the 7th of August 2021 at the prestigious theatre, Fairfield Halls, Park Lane, Croydon, Greater London. Time is 12 p.m. Door opens at 11 a.m. Theme, It is Finished. For free registration, visit our website, ladytoladyglobal.org, or call us on 0203 983 9394, or at the door. It is our time of visitation. See you there.